Let's bring in Michigan Republican Representative Peter Meijer, who serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman Meijer is also an Iraq War veteran and just returned from Afghanistan. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. Want to talk about how this trip came to be. You traveled there with Congressman Seth Moulton from Massachusetts. How did it come to pass?
Thank you, Brett. Both Seth and myself have been actively engaged on what's called the special immigrant visa issue. Those were visas in a program for individuals who had loyally served the United States in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. There have been a tremendous backlog of these cases. And in April, when President Biden announced that he was continuing the initial plan for withdrawal that started under President Trump, we urged the administration to address this backlog. We had to know what was going on the ground in Kabul. And we have not had the information we need from the administration and realized that we were being lied to up and down, and we needed to see for ourselves.
So Congressman Moulton tweeted out, today with Representative Meijer, I visited Kabul airport to conduct oversight on the evacuation, witnessing our young Marines and soldiers at the gates navigating a confluence of humanity as raw and visceral as the world has ever seen was indescribable. Can you put into words what you saw and whether you think that the 1,500, whatever that number is, Americans outside of those gates have a chance to get to inside the airport by the deadline of August 31st?
Let me first say that both the soldiers and Marines who are out there and the State Department civilians are working tirelessly around the clock to serve American citizens, permanent residents, special immigrant visa holders, and others who may be eligible. And I have seen them jump and make sure they do everything they can to rescue American citizens in harm's way. Now, the gates to the airport are unlike anything I've ever seen. It is a throng of individuals, oftentimes thousands deep, desperate for a new life, desperate for opportunity, mixed in with random individuals who may be desperate but don't have a document or status, are oftentimes American citizens, and soldiers and Marines try to pull them out. I mean, it is a chaotic, just incredibly dangerous and volatile mix. Individuals have been trampled to death. I just heard of a 2-year-old girl, of an interpreter who worked for the U.S. military who was trampled. We are putting our soldiers and Marines in impossible situations, but they are living up to their code, and we should be proud of how they are, with discipline and responsibility, dealing with this incredibly horrific and impossible situation.
Congressman, the Pentagon didn't know that you were going. They said the Secretary of Defense would have liked to have consulted with you before you went, and that it's, quote, a dangerous, intense situation. And here's what your leadership, both sides, said about all of this.
Any member that I've heard that might go, I explained to them that I don't think they should. I think it creates a greater risk. You've got enough Americans over there that could be held hostage. They'd make a point out of a member of Congress.
This is deadly serious. We do not want members to go. You need the approval of your committee chair in order to do that. And we've put out the word to committee chairs. There ain't going to be no planes or this or that for people going to the region.
So did you complicate things, Congressman, by the two of you going in a tense and dynamic situation that the military is trying to deal with other things besides two congressmen trying to get a look at things?
Yeah, let me be very clear, Brett. We were not planning to go there and be dependent on the U.S. military. Our plan was entirely independent of that. We did make ourselves known on arrival for situational awareness of the individuals who were there. But the opprobrium from the Defense Department, from the White House, from the State Department is frankly laughable. Right now, they have done everything they can to obstruct the situation, to deny this reality, and frankly, to hide facts from the American people. I'll be honest, I did not support the decision to end our operations on August 31st before I went. After talking with commanders on the ground, I trusted their judgment, and I believed it. That is what I want to take back to my fellow members of Congress. Those are the stories that I want to tell that aren't being told, of the individuals on the ground who are committing some of the most heroic acts I have seen in my life.
Not to get too into the weeds here, but did you fly in and out privately, or was it military? How'd you get there?
We did not fly in on U.S. military aircraft. Like I said, our plan was not to be dependent on anything related to the U.S. government, and just the decisions on behalf of the president, of the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of State to obfuscate here are more intended to distract from the underlying issues, from the chaos of the withdrawal, than to really tell how we make sure we learn the right lessons, support the individuals on the ground today, and keep the promises we've made to American citizens and those who have loyally served us in Afghanistan.
Yeah. And when you flew in, you did so non-military. When you flew out, you didn't fly on a military plane, and you are on your way back to the U.S.
We did fly in a military plane on the way out at the encouragement of individuals who were there. We waited for a plane that had open seats to make sure that we didn't take away anything from individuals who needed it, and actually went several hours out of our way. We're currently in Doha. We visited Al Udeid Air Base earlier, which is one of the largest staging operations for this mass evacuation. Again, to be able to report what is going on so that Congress can not only exhibit oversight, but share and understand what resources need to be provided to those who are on the ground right now so they can continue to save lives in this chaotic moment.
It sounds from your leadership that other congressmen and women are not going now. The window is closing, and the time is coming to an end. If you had one message to the American people after what you saw on the ground, what would it be?
You have individuals there in Kabul who evacuated the U.S. Embassy with moments' notice. I know soldiers who left behind their boots. They're wearing tennis shoes right now. Others who are in the same uniform they had when they evacuated the embassy 2 weeks ago because they didn't have time to grab their rucksack. They went right into Kabul airport, into chaos and pandemonium and tens of thousands overrunning the runway, and then pivoted to not only negotiating and having to deal with the Taliban as frankly a security partner rather than adversary, but also execute one of the most complicated logistical feats and probably the largest airlift in human history. These people are heroes. Their stories need to be told, and I am so damn proud to be an American from what I saw on the ground in Kabul.
Congressman Meijer, we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brent.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.